so blessed to be her son. She taught us to serve others. She taught us to be civil. She taught us to love your family with your heart and soul.
Jeb Bush paying tribute to his mother, Barbara Bush. Tonight, the former First Lady is being remembered for her devotion to her family and country. Private viewings for Mrs. Bush are being held today and tomorrow in Houston, Texas. Her funeral is scheduled for Saturday at the family's church. First Lady Melania Trump will attend, as will former presidents and First Ladies Bill and Hillary Clinton and Barack and Michelle Obama. Barbara Bush died last night with her husband, along with her husband by her side, former President George H.W. Bush. She was 92 years old. All day long, Texans have been paying their respects to the former First Lady, and they've been signing a book of condolences at the Bush Presidential Library in College Station and leaving cards and flowers at the Bush's gated community.
The entire country, especially the city of Houston, Texas, is going to be grieving for a long time because she was such a presence. I always think if the world could be full of Barbara Bushes, the world would be a much better place.
The former president released a statement saying, in part, the outpouring of love and friendship being directed at the enforcer is lifting all of us up.
You know, a lot of people remember Barbara Bush as a grandmotherly figure with a cloud of white hair and a strand of fake pearls. But there were plenty of things about Barbara Bush that we didn't know about, and our Bruce Leshan talked about that today with Susan Page of USA Today. She spent hours interviewing the former First Lady for a biography that's due out next year.
Why Barbara Bush?
Barbara Bush may have been the person whose public persona was most different from how I think she really was. She was a warm and kind person and a grandmother, but she was sharp and funny and candid. She had a lot of opinions, and she did not hesitate to express them to her husband and her sons.
I'd never heard that she had this terrible depression.
Barbara Bush had a serious bout of depression. She contemplated suicide. She said that she didn't kill herself because she wasn't brave enough to do it. She would be driving and think about driving into a tree, and she would just pull off until that impulse had passed. She said it changed her. It gave her some empathy for people who struggle with depression and other mental illness. It made her realize that you can't just talk yourself out of it or power through. And it made her realize that she should have sought help, although she didn't. The fact is, she had a lot of struggles in her life, and she didn't complain about them, and people maybe weren't aware of them, but the death of her daughter, her bout of depression, her diagnosis with Graves' disease after just a few months in the White House.
She was in pain. She had double vision because of this Graves' disease?
It was a more serious ailment than we knew. And of course, she had all the family problems that every American family has of divorce and of controversy and of conflict. And they were things that she handled without any complaint. And I think in some ways she was the glue that held that big, sprawling family together.
I'm the mother of wonderful children and the wife of the world's greatest man.
Susan Page points out that Barbara Bush was born 5 years after women got the vote and lived to see a woman almost win the White House. Barbara Bush did not vote for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. She wrote in her son Jeb's name. At the White House, Bruce Leshan, WUSA 9.
Of course she did. Susan Page's biography will be called The Matriarch, Barbara Bush and the Making of an American Dynasty.
President Trump ordered U.S. flags at the White House and elsewhere across the country lowered to half-staff in honor of the former First Lady. And people here in Washington are paying their respects to Mrs. Bush as well. Many of them lined up to sign an official condolence book for Barbara Bush at the White House Visitor Center on Pennsylvania Avenue. It's going to be available daily from 7:30 in the morning to 4 p.m. While First Lady, Mrs. Bush helped establish the White House Endowment Trust, which provides money for the refurbishing and conservation of the Executive Mansion, staterooms, and collections. And at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery, a portrait of Barbara Bush is now on display at the museum's In Memoriam exhibit. It's a photograph of the former First Lady taken by Diana Walker in 1989. That portrait will remain there until April 29th. And on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Senate began today's session with a prayer and tributes to Mrs. Bush.
But above all, Barbara's life was defined by love. She loved her husband and her family. She loved her country, and America loved her back.
Simply put, Mrs. Bush was the personification of grace and class, as First Lady and as a human being throughout her life. She will be missed by people on both sides of the aisle and by all Americans.
Barbara Bush was dedicated to promoting literacy in the U.S., calling it the country's most important issue. As First Lady, she focused on early education for preschoolers and adult literacy for their parents.
I honestly believe that if more people could read, write, and comprehend, we would be that much closer to solving so many of the problems that plague our nation.
Barbara Bush once told a commencement gathering that at the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a friend, a child, or a parent. Some people say Barbara Bush's defining moment as First Lady came in March of 1989. Her husband still new in office when the First Lady made a visit to a place called Grandma's House in Northwest D.C. It was one of the first places in the entire country dedicated to children diagnosed with HIV. An image of Mrs. Bush holding an infant with AIDS and another picture of her hugging a man with AIDS sent powerful messages of compassion and unconditional love. It was a time when many people were afraid to even touch people with the disease.